On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, Canada wins bronze at the FIBA World Cup, and it's very, very exciting. We'll dig into our biggest takeaways from a very successful run in the World Cup for Canada. Plus, what did we learn about Dennis Schroder and his role with the Raptors? We'll get some fun tales from Jakarta from Alex Adams, today's wonderful guest, and we'll take a look ahead at Parrish 2024. It's all coming up on today's show. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, September the 12th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 9 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Twitter at Woodley Sean. You can follow the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. You can join our Discord server. Link is in the description. Come hang out. A great little family we got building around the show. Lots of talk about fantasy basketball and the Blue Jays and movies and, of course, whatever the hell is going on with the Toronto Raptors. It's all in there. Come hang out. Link in the description as always. If you need it, you can always DM me as well, and I can drop you the fresh link to join our little Discord family. You can also find the show for free on your favorite podcast apps. Please subscribe, follow, rate, review. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube as well so you never miss an episode. And we're thrilled to have you along today as we take a look now at your bronze medal winning Team Canada, coming off a thrilling overtime victory against the States in the bronze medal game on Sunday morning. The wee hours of Sunday morning. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander going off, Dillon Brooks doing the thing, and a really fun cap to a very fun tournament for Canada. And here to talk about it and to put a little bow on the tournament, to look ahead to Parrish 2024, is Alex Adams from Raptors Republic from CBC Radio, who was in Jakarta during the first 3 games for Canada before everything moved over to Manila. Alex, it's wonderful to have you. How are you, man?
Great. The jet lag is definitely gone. So
glad to hear it.
The last couple games, I felt I was on Jakarta time because all the games were at 4 a.m. So it's not the best way to transition to Canadian time, but it was great covering the team, and I'm really happy to be on. Friend of the show, Vivek. I'm gonna try to stay keep up with his excellent work. So
he's fine. Don't give him too big of a head. But yeah, so you were in Jakarta covering the World Cup and watching Canada in their first 3 games over in the group stage. We're going to get into some tales from the ground. I think you got a Bruno tale you're going to pass along, which is very exciting. We'll talk a little Dennis Schroder. We'll talk about Parrish 2024. But we should, of course, begin talking about your Canadian national team, bronze medalists for the very first time at the FIBA World Cup. Probably the high watermark of achievement for the Canadian men's program. I guess you could say they technically won silver back in 1938, but I don't think anyone cares about that. So, Alex, I guess let's just start big picture. What was your sort of biggest takeaway? It's now been a couple days since the end of the tournament. What have you been kind of thinking about? What are your biggest pullaways from a very successful run over in Jakarta and Manila for your Canadian national team?
Well, they finally did it. Canada's had the talent for so long. We think about 2015, if you're a fan of the program, that heartbreak against Venezuela. Then obviously Thomas Satoransky is in my nightmares, and definitely Lou Dort's nightmares as well, with that shot in Victoria after a crazy comeback. And I felt those scars. I felt those ghosts in that Spain game when I was there. Definitely felt, if you saw my Twitter, that I did not believe in this team, and I said, woe is me. This always happens. And guess what? It didn't happen, and they came back. You have to, thank Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Dillon Brooks became a 58% three-point shooter in this tournament. I don't know how that happened. I will say, seeing him on the ground, he was Canada's best shooter in practice, but that doesn't always translate to the games. But that's an interesting tidbit. But just, they finally did it, right? This Canada has over 20 NBA players. They should be in Olympics. They should be getting medals at FIBA World Cups, and they finally did it. And I just think about all the guys on this program, like Melvin Edem, Dwight Powell, who was, after the Spain game was, close to tears when I talked to him after the game. And there's the video of him in the locker room crying or close to tears. So they finally did it. We're going to see them at the Olympics. There's unless barring crazy injuries, it's going to be a pretty NBA loaded roster. And what a time to follow this program. And it's not bad beating the United States in a bronze game. I like that, especially after the U.S. came back. But then also Shai was like, I'm going to get an off-ball defender to break his ankles, who's not even guarding me, which I've never seen before. So
to rope someone else into your gravity as you cross a dude into oblivion is that's like Jupiter during the forming of the solar system stuff. It's incredible. Yeah. Like, to kind of pick up your point, I think, yes, it's probably overdue, frankly, for them to have success at a tournament like this, but I don't care now. Like, I'm just thrilled that it happened. Before I dive into my sort of big takeaway from the tournament, I have to ask you, what would you have preferred? You make the final, but lose and get silver, or you get bronze by beating the States. What's the better outcome here for
Sean, you're way ahead of me. I've been thinking about this as well. I'd say beating the States in a bronze medal game is just way bigger of an achievement. You're going to get way more people. You see on CBC, CTV, all the major outlets. It's a national story, even on the first day of NFL and everything. It's just such a monumental win for this program and really caps off a great tournament, right? Sure, it's not a gold medal, but that's pretty sweet. And the way they did it, and just also Dylan Brooks, like I can't even explain what that performance was like. Just unbelievable. I'm thinking about, I think LeBron asking to be part of the USA might just be trying him to one up Dylan Brooks. Let's see what kind of takes shape there. But just what a performance to beat the United States, and really a statement for this program. And leading up to the Olympics next summer, there's been some rumors from Brian Windhorst, maybe a home and home in Toronto and Vegas. That sounds pretty nice to me with the U.S. So I think it really teases and puts them in a great kind of launching pad to gain some momentum next summer, where they say, hey, you know what, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, you guys lost to us. We're the best teams in North America. So pretty fun way to cap off the tournament.
Yeah, just like give me a big gulp's worth of American tears after that, baby. I feel like that's maybe a prop that Dylan Brooks is going to bust out at some point down the line. So for me, I kind of have two big takeaways from this tournament, and they're very much on like the polar opposite ends of the talent spectrum. Number one is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is incredible, and Canada has a dude now that you speak of in the same sort of sentence as Luka Doncic or Giannis Antetokounmpo or Nikola Jokic, where it's like, okay, if their national team has that guy, they got a shot. Obviously, Serbia's got a shot without Jokic. They made it all the way to the final, beat Canada. They were outstanding. I shudder to think what they would have looked like with Jokic, with that whole team around him. But I think like Shai is one of those dudes. Obviously, we kind of knew that anyway. He was first team All NBA. He, was just like, I think he finished 5th in MVP voting. He's incredible, and we knew this. But to see it kind of on the stage with the supporting cast that Canada can throw out there around him gave me a lot of hope that, yeah, maybe, next summer, Paris, it's going to be a stacked field, right? Who knows, what guys are going to show up for the States. They're going to be better than the team that they had at the World Cup. We know that Serbia is going to be loaded for bear with Jokic, most likely. We know that Germany is obviously a very good team. We know France is going to put up their best team as the host nation. It's going to be a loaded field, but when you have Shai, you're going to have a chance against literally anybody, and that is very exciting. And I think the other side of this too is I think this is also a win for the sort of grander scheme of basketball in Canada. There was the graphic going around today of all the different players who had a part in the lead up to this tournament in the qualifiers, 18 different players from the CEBL, notably. I'll toot that horn as a CEBL guy all day. Yeah. That's really awesome. Obviously during the season, there's these qualification windows and whatnot where the pros or the NBA guys are not able to be there, and to have the depth of talent that Canada has now, like, yes, Cassius Robertson or Khalif Young are not going to get a medal for winning at the World Cup, but their fingerprints are all over this run to the bronze as well, right, Alex?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, you think about, it's almost emblematic with, or kind of, you think about guys like Phil Scrubb, Melvin Edem, Kyle Alexander, Trey Bell Haynes, guys that have been playing in Europe for a long time who went to Venezuela in December or whatever and had those long treks and remember, like, these guys don't get paid to play for their national team or very little in comparison, right? This is because they love their country, and to see guys like a Melvin Edem, like a Dwight Powell, like a Phil Scrub, shout out Carleton as an alum. Just
same here, baby.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah. We'll bond over that later.
I have a question for you after, but just amazing, and it really shows where this program, but also, as you mentioned, the Canadian basketball kind of is, like, as Mike Bartlett would say, it's a powerhouse. We're a powerhouse now, and I don't think going forward, making the Olympics should be a big point of pride. It should be the expectation. Getting a medal at a FIBA World Cup sure is nice, but I don't think should be, oh my God, this is the pinnacle of Canadian basketball. Should be the expectations. Every tournament that for the men's side that they enter, they should feel as though they can win the gold, and that if they come out like the Americans empty-handed with no medal, then that's a disappointment. So the Americans can maybe learn a thing or two from Canada right now, but to be a bit cheeky. But overall, just this program is only going up. There's only going to be more and more NBA players every year. There's guys getting drafted in the first round, second round. And it's just such an exciting moment in time for this program and for Canada basketball. And the platform they're going to have at the Olympics is going to be monumental. And I know from covering this team, all these people that were inspired by Steve Nash in 2000, I'm pretty sure it's going to be maybe 2, 3, 4 times more, especially with all the NBA talent at the Olympics. It's just going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. Can't wait for it. We're going to talk about Paris 2024 in the final segment of the show. But speaking of powerhouses, we got one Dennis Schroder to talk about. We also got some of your tales from Jakarta as you were covering the tournament. One of the very few Canadian media over there covering it, so I'm very excited to get into all that. We will do that momentarily. Before we do that, however, got to tell you about our friends over at Bird Dogs, who make simply the most comfortable shorts you are ever going to wear. I am someone who is hot and sweaty at all times. The summertime is a rough go for me. The last week when it was 40 degrees every day, not so fun, but the Bird Dogs made it a little bit more fun because they're airy, they're light, they're breathable, and they have a built-in comfort lining that makes underwear obsolete, so you have less stuff you gotta wear out and about as well. You can wear your Bird Dogs anywhere. You can wear them to the bar, you can wear them to go golfing, you can wear them to the gym, you can wear them on a date. They're super versatile, super comfortable. I got a few pairs from Bird Dogs in the mail. I have a couple in my closet. I also gave a couple to my dad because my dad loves shorts and loves comfort. He's having a great time. My wife, my head's too big for the Bird Dogs hat they sent me. My wife wears it when she goes paddleboarding. It's a wonderful hat. And I have the hiking pants, the jogger pants, whatever you want to call them. They are super comfortable as well. You want to go check them out. They're functional and for any single occasion you can think of. And go check them out right now. Go to birddogs.com/LockedInNBA or enter the promo code LockedInNBA at checkout for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedInNBA for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. All right, we continue on here. Alex Adams of Raptors Republic along, talking Canada at the World Cup. Very exciting times. We'll be back to talking Raptors tomorrow as Vivek Jacobs is going to come along. I think we're going to dive deep into the starting lineup question, which is a question hanging over everybody's head. Someone who will be involved in that question, Alex, is, of course, Dennis Schroder, who won MVP. Germany wins the gold. That was a super fun game. Serbia makes it interesting near the end, but Germany just too much. Franz Wagner really good. And, of course, Dennis Schroder comes away winning the MVP of the tournament. What were your impressions of Schroder? Obviously, we now turn our attention towards the Raptors. I don't think we got to just, pump the brakes for a sec. He didn't just become the best player in the world because he was great in FIBA. He's been great in FIBA quite literally every time out for the last 10 years. He's still Dennis Schroder in the NBA. But did you get any sort of kernels of optimism from watching Dennis play with Germany about how he might fit into the Raptors? What were your overall takeaways from his work?
I mean, him playing and winning MVP cannot be a bad thing for Raptors fans.
No,
right?
it's not bad, for sure.
If he was averaging, 9 points and 2 assists and 2 rebounds and getting, cooked on defense, then, yeah, maybe you should be a bit worried. I thought, people talk about how he shot really well from three. He didn't actually. If you look at the stats, he was 32% on 7 attempts. Now, I don't know if he's going to be shooting that many threes for the Raptors. Maybe with their lack of 3-point prowess, maybe he will have to. But he was really good overall from the field, shot over 52%, got to the lane just amazingly, really good floater game as well. I think those are some of the things that the Raptors really haven't had since, even before Kyle Lowry. I mean, just a guy that can really beat guys off the dribble, get to the rim. Kyle Lowry would use that maybe with his rear end to get downhill, but not necessarily with his athleticism. So he's going to bring a nice little unique dynamic, and obviously playing that well can only be a good thing. You look at Ricky Rubio, who won the MVP in 19. He played really well the following season. So there is a Kyrie Irving as well in 2015, although he got LeBron James, so that helps a little bit.
That helps, yeah.
But I think, he overall had about 6 assists a game. That'd be nice if it was around that, maybe 4 or 5 for the Raptors. So he really is who he is. And I wonder if on the Raptors, if he's the starting point guard and he knows his role and doesn't have to prove anything, maybe there's that confidence that he might not have in other situations, for example, the Lakers and everywhere else he's played for. I think about how he played with OKC a couple years ago with Chris Paul and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That might be, now it won't be that many guards for the Raptors, but
notably 2 fewer guards on the entire Raptors roster than you just listed off in one sentence. So
exactly. Well, we can pray for Shai in 2027 or 2028 whenever he's a free agent. It might be even later than that. I don't know off the top of my head, but
I fear he's going to be unattainable for a very, very, very long time. And it makes me very sad, Alex.
I know. I was thinking about Shai trade like a year ago, and that's definitely gone out the wind. But overall, I think you can only be excited considering who he was, and considering at the time of his signing, if you're a Raptors fan, you must be much more excited now than you were maybe after realizing that you lost out on Fred to Dennis Schroder. So I wouldn't glean too much, but it is a good sign going into the season.
Yeah, it softens the blow of the Fred thing, at least artificially, for a couple months until we actually see it all in practice on the floor. And like I said, we'll dig more into the Schroder experience and sort of where he's going to fit into the Raptors' plans on tomorrow's show with Big V. We got to talk about Jakarta, though, Alex. You were in Jakarta. You were one of the very few Canadian media down there. Very cool, I imagine, on your end, getting that chance to go there and cover the tournament. Do you have any just tales from the ground, tales from being there that you want to pass along? Anything that really stood out? Obviously, you were there for the Spain game, massive. Bruno, Brazil, they were part of the group as well. I'm sure you had some interactions there. What do you got as far as really good anecdotes from the ground in Jakarta?
So I'll give some Raptors specific ones because I have a lot of stories. But with Bruno, I developed a relationship with him. Really, really nice guy. I had an interview people can check out on Raptors Republic and on their podcast side, and just talking about his time in Toronto. But I talked to him before the Canada game, and let's say he was motivated to beat Canada because of his time in the Raptors. I won't say any more because that might be crossing the journalistic line, but he was very motivated to beat Canada, and he was very excited. And then actually, funnily enough, Brazil doesn't take their players on they don't give them business class. So he was in an economy with me to Tokyo. So I kept seeing him on the plane and in the airport. And I talked to him after they lost to Latvia. And we were kind of talking about, hey, the refs kind of screwed you over. He's like, yeah, they always screw me over and stuff like that. So, and then on the way out, he said, have a great flight back to Toronto, even though I'm from Ottawa, actually. But, I know what he meant. So very nice guy. I really felt as though he could have a spot in the NBA just the way he played. And for people that don't know, he was playing as a center. Was just super long, athletic, was good offensively, would, make a lot of 3-pointers. So really cool. Now to another one, I had to sit down with Sergio Scariolo, obviously. A lot of Raptors fans know him. And he talked about how on the 2019 team, when he got there, how people on the team would call him head coach, because he had been the head coach for so long in Europe. And a lot of times coaches, interestingly, are in the NBA are offensive or defensive. So because he was labeled as this head coach, it made it easier for guys like Kyle Lowry, who trusted him maybe a bit more and valued his kind of opinion more so than maybe a full-time NBA guy who's been a coach for a long time. As well, he told me, and it was in a throwaway question, about how he found out he didn't get the Raptors job. So and I did some digging, and it was about a day or two after Darko, or before Darko was announced as head coach. But he's a big Inter Milan fan. And so they were in the Champions League final of soccer. And he got the call 10 minutes before the game-winning goal for Manchester City over Inter Milan. So he said it was a really tough 10 minutes for him. So people can check out that interview. And he also, Jordy, I asked a question, and he called Sergio his FIBA father. So that is kind of cool. So they had worked for Spain and were very tight. And actually, when I was interviewing him, Jordy came. I was at their hotel. Jordy came and started saying, Alex, you have to give him, I don't know if I can swear, but can kind of give him a lot of grief, let's say, midway through, and I had to cut that out. So he just impromptu came through and during my interview. So very nice guy. His hair is as sparkling as ever. And,
did you reach out to touch it? I guess you can't really do that.
I did not ask about
trying
tips.
to uphold journalistic integrity.
I was a bit nervous to ask about tips because then I just feel worse about myself. So I
this is just natural, man. I don't know what to do.
You're exactly. But really, really nice guy, and just people should check it out because he talks about that 2019 team and what it was like to coach a Marc Gasol and how smart the team was and how they came together, and how he just at the beginning, I remember he talked about how the dynamic wasn't maybe the best in 2018 to start, and they came together, and he saw Kyle Lowry barking at everyone and was like, "Oh, this is the NBA. Oh, that's interesting. This isn't what I see in Europe." So very interesting. I mean, I'm putting maybe words in his mouth, but you get the gist, and that's kind of what he talked about. So check it out. I think if you're a Raptors fan, it's my Bruno interview and Sergio. So check that out. Shameless plug. But that's the kind of Raptors stuff, and just seeing French journalists apoplectic after a game was really fun. I got one who came after. I was recording a podcast, and he comes up to me right before, after 20 minutes after they lost by 30, and says, we're gonna play you guys again, and we're gonna beat you. And I'm thinking, I don't know. You lost by 30. I don't know. Maybe, but that's.
I mean, they will have Wemby. I guess maybe Joel Embiid too.
That tournament he talked about in the FIBA World Cup.
That ended
at the Olympics.
Well,
he said later in this tournament. I'm thinking, well, we just beat you by 30. And I have a bunch of other stories. But I got to know the CEO very well, Rowan Baird as well. I'm trying to think of other Raptors connections, but. Overall, was really cool interviewing the players. Zach Edie had an interesting thing about how he didn't want to acclimatize to the FIBA game because he's going back to college and he doesn't want to get called for. So that was quite funny. But yeah, learned so much, and I'm very lucky to have gone and very fortunate. But
it's awesome.
I hope I gave people some cool stories there.
Yeah, for sure. The links to the Sergio Scariolo, Bruno Caboclo pieces will be in the description of the podcast, so make sure you go check those out. Let's take a quick beat. We'll come back. We'll look at Paris 2024. We're going to run through the Canadian roster, speaking of Zach Edey, among others, and determine whether or not some of these dudes will be on the team in 2024. Obviously, some big philosophical conundrums for the Canadian squad, considering the commitments and the lack of commitments. And it's the Olympics. Maybe we shouldn't care about that. We'll get to that in just one sec. But first, heads up, go check out Locked On Blue Jays. As I record this podcast right now, the Toronto Blue Jays are playing the Texas Rangers in the biggest series of the season, and Craig Ballard's doing a great job breaking it all down over on Locked On Blue Jays, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Go check it out. All right, let's close this out, Alex, with a look at 2024 in Paris. We're going to do a simple exercise here. I have the roster from Team Canada in front of me. We are going to go player by player, and we will simply say yes or no whether the player will be on the Team Canada 2024 Olympic roster.
Putting me on the spot.
What's that, sorry?
Putting me on the spot. Okay. Well,
Yes, that's
we'll do this.
100% what we're doing here. It's what I specialize in, is putting my guests on the spot and making them not want to come back. All right, let's dive in first. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a lock, I would presume.
I mean, he could be a bit better defensively. No. Yes, lock that in 10 out of 10 times. I mean, that's obvious.
The only way it doesn't happen is if the glorious city of Hamilton secedes between now and 2024, finds its way into the Olympics through a qualifying tournament, and Shai is the captain. With me and my pickup buddies flanking him alongside. Let's go now to RJ Barrett. That's a lock too, I'm assuming.
Yeah, well, as Shai said before the tournament, he has no choice because of his dad to play for Canada. So, yes, I'm going to lock that one in as well. Yep.
Dillon Brooks, is there anything he could do for the Houston Rockets this season to sap all the goodwill of his run for Canada and make it so he's not part of the Olympic team?
Maybe some flagrant foul on like Scotty Barnes or something. Other than that, I really don't see a way for anything. He was, I can't even talk about him because I'm at a loss for words. So that's a yes. Lock it.
Not to promote another podcast, not at all Locked On affiliated. Go listen to our friend Keith Parrish, former and future guest of the podcast from Fast Baked Breakfast. Huge Dillon Brooks fan. He did a whole podcast just talking about Dillon Brooks and his reaction to his 39-point game in the bronze medal game. Go listen to Keith.
I'll check
Fast
that
Baked
out.
Breakfast. It's the best. All right, now we got those are like the three like locks, I would say, like the locks of locks. There are other locks too that we'll get to here. I want to save the big men for a conversation a little later, but Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
I mean, his connection with Shai, it's gonna be, it's gonna be tough. I don't know if Shai really wants him on the team. So no, I'm pretty sure those guys, just for a little tidbit, they were inseparable together. Like they were always before practice, just shooting around together, almost really pushing each other as well. So I think those two are going to be there in pairs.
I didn't really set the stage all that well, by the way, starting off this segment. Again, a 12-man roster. You've got 7 NBA players on this team. Of course, we'll talk about a couple of these guys who are not NBA players and whether they'll be back next year. But it's complicated by the fact that Team Canada, a few years back, asked for 3-year commitments for all these guys to play through all of the tournaments leading up to the Olympics. Notably, Andrew Wiggins is not someone who made that commitment, but is someone who, talent-wise, might be in line for a roster spot, and there's this sort of philosophical conundrum of that, which I'm sure we'll debate a million times between now and next summer. For me, it's probably just a case of you take the best players and say, sorry, but hey, maybe this is the new standard and we just have all the best players all the time. I digress. Lou Dort, he had, I think, a pretty up and down tournament. He looked good in a couple of games. He looked Precious Achua-like in a few of his drives. Not a good thing. Where are you at with Lou Dort?
Yeah, just to go on that, I think if Canada has maybe a bit more playmaking and shooting around him, he probably doesn't have to shoot as much. But his defense was amazing as always. So yes, he's going to be there. And I always like the Dortcher Chamber, so I'm a big fan. So I have a jersey of him at home. I got it after 2020 bubble, so I'm all in.
Hell yeah. And then we got the two bigs, Dwight Powell, Kelly Olynyk. I'm interested in these guys because the big man depth is a notable weakness of the program. Zach Edie was on the team. We'll talk about him in a sec. But Dwight Powell, Kelly Olynyk, I would think would be there. Yes. But are they potentially at risk if, a Brandon Clark situation comes along and there's maybe they got to budget the roster spots so they're not loading it up too much with centers? Obviously, Kelly can play the 4 a little bit. He shoots, he playmakes from the elbows. You'd guess they'd be there. I asked just because they're both a little longer in the tooth. They've been around a long time. Can't imagine they won't be on the Olympic squad after being such good soldiers for the program, but I do think the center conversation is a very interesting one, and those two guys are very much part of it.
I think with that, it's more who does Canada bring in to maybe supplement those two players rather than I don't see them, barring injury. They want to be in Paris. It's interesting though with Kelly. Throughout the tournament, he played when he wasn't as good, but also he became a bench player after being a main focal of their starting lineup. So just maybe his lack of defense got exposed and really just Canada's lack of size and playmaking and. So it was interesting to see that, and he was good about coming off the bench, played really well against the Americans in the bronze medal. So that's an interesting tidbit going into Paris, is that maybe Kelly is now more of a bench player.
Mm-hmm.
Dwight Powell I thought was really good for who he is throughout the tournament. And sure, maybe you'd want a better big in a lot of ways, but he did his job, and he wasn't the reason why Canada was winning or losing games. It would just be nice if there was another guy off the bench, as you said, to maybe add if Powell's in foul trouble, like he was against Serbia and in other games as well.
So let's lump these next two guys together, Zach Edie and Kyle Alexander. We saw Alexander get more run than Edie, kind of as like a small ball, quicker, more versatile defensive option. Edie, had the nice game against Lemedon and then didn't really play much beyond that. Where are you at with Alexander and Edie? Are either of them going to be on the team in 2024? Kind of benefactors of the lack of big man depth.
That's going to be one of the biggest questions with this roster going into Paris. Does Canada? Kem Birch is originally on that core 4 team. Yep. So if he comes back to decent health, I'd take him probably over those two guys. But that's a pretty big if.
Yeah.
So if and then do they go to, as you mentioned, to Brandon Clark? Although he's really stated that he's probably not interested. He's coming off an Achilles injury, but the lure of an Olympics is pretty big for a lot of guys. Trey Lyles was there in 2021. He's not really a 5, but he is a big. He's definitely suited for FIBA, just like big, stocky, a guy, but who can also shoot. So it's going to be interesting. If I had to guess, one of the two makes it. I would probably lean to Edie, but man, it's tough. I liked Alexander, but I believe he needs to be with really good players and really
he's not bringing you much offensively.
You need scorers around him, and on that second unit when it was Trey Bell Haynes and Melvin Edem, it probably didn't help him because he's a bit of a black hole offensively, although pretty good defensively. So maybe that's different when you have a Jamal Murray and maybe an Andrew Wiggins, and then you have guys more like Kelly Olynyk and RJ Barrett off the bench. That maybe helps him out. So it's going to be a tough one, but I'll say one of the two if that's a cop out. And probably Edie, but I'm actually a bit higher on Alexander, but just Edie seems to be the guy that Canada really seems to be very high on, especially in the FIBA game.
Yeah, I mean, with Edie, right, like who knows what's going to happen this year at Purdue. I'm sure there will be plenty of development in his game. Does he have like the foot speed and athleticism to really kind of hang at the super high level? That's the big question. You're shaking your head, and I think rightfully. And he does feel... It's like a situation of, okay, he's like enormous. He's like this kind of like gimmicky player who will probably spook a team for a few minutes if you throw him in there, and they won't really have much of an answer for him. He's got the soft touch and the finish around the bucket. All of that can give you some punch there, but does he get roasted defensively, and does he become the kind of guy who is on the roster to play like gimmick minutes? And is that the best way to build a 12-man roster? That's hard to say.
To quote like, a Bruno reference, like maybe he's 2 years away from being 2 years away on this roster, right? Maybe when he's 26 and just a bit more spry and understands coverages more in a FIBA game. I think maybe in 2028 he might be a big part of the team because he is such an enormous guy and has very good touch around the rim. Like he won Player of the Year in college, so he's not a bad player by any means. But right now, I don't think he understands the defensive coverages enough to really, with his lack of foot speed, really sustain himself out there on the court. And you could see that in the game against, I think he was minus 15 in 2 minutes versus the USA, which is not good. Yeah.
Not the best. Let's go to the two guards who will be very much fighting to keep their jobs on this team. Trey Bell Haynes and Phil Scrubb. Shout out Carlton, our dude. Trey Bell Haynes, also a longtime CEBL guy, so my dude also. Where are you at with these two guys? Are one or both of them on or off the roster? Obviously, Jamal Murray is the incoming guy. Andrew Wiggins, you got Shaedon Sharpe, you got Ben Mathurin. It seems as though the infusion of talent is going to come in the wings and in the backcourt. Are Scrubb and Trey Bell Haynes maybe going to be on the outside looking in, do you think?
I wish I could say yes to this, but I see it as no, especially with Murray out and then probably one more NBA player, if that's a Wiggins, Nembhard, Corey Joseph.
Forgot Nembhard, yeah.
O'Shea Brissett as well. Especially with Murray back, they don't really need another guard necessarily. And I just don't see it like for Scrub, not at all, because he's a shooting guard. And for Trey Bell Haynes, probably not. I just don't see them bringing him on the team when they have Jamal Murray and they'll have Nikhil and RJ maybe off the bench. So, or Corey Joseph as well. So I don't see it for either of those two. Unfortunately, as cool as it was to see Phil Scrub make a big shot against Latvia, which really tugged at my heart. But overall, I'm going to say no on the two of them.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then the last guy, and we speak of philosophical conundrums, but this is probably the biggest one. Melvin Edem, who has been a soldier for Canada basketball forever. He is into his early mid-30s now. He was a bit player on this team, but not a massive contributor. And as much as Melvin Edem rocks, there are probably ways in which you can upgrade on the talent level of the Melvin Edem roster spot. Where are you at with Melvin Edem? Do they go with the sentimentality and say, you know what, man, you are kind of like this embodiment of this era of Canada basketball. You've been here all the way through. Yes, you haven't been an NBA guy. Yes, maybe you're not the best talent guy, but it feels good to have you here as one of our commitment guys. Or is he going to get nudged out for an NBA guy, do you think?
I think he's going to be, I mean, I don't have any insight. I'd put him on the roster as the 12th man. Sure. Just because when I talk to all the guys there, they always talk about Mel being almost a leader on this team. And, you know, he can still play. You can put him in situations. And for example, guys like, you know, I don't have hard reporting, but what I've heard is maybe that Corey Joseph didn't want a small role on this team. So for some NBA guys, they don't want to be the 11th or 12th man on this roster. Sure. So with Melvin Edem, I think he'd be more than happy to get on the flight to Paris and go to the Olympics. So as the 12th man, yes. Otherwise, I don't really see a fit for him. I don't think he's going to really play significant minutes, if any minutes at all. But to have someone like that who's been through the battles, and also just as a leader for this team, that, you know, I know he met RJ and Shai in Manila, or I think RJ when he was like 12. So he knows these guys since they were very young, and I think would be really good on the team, especially in that like 12th man role.
The Udonis Haslem of Canada basketball, if
that
you
is
will.
A great Udonis Haslem, but can play a bit. There you go.
Hell yeah. That's a perfect way to end off this episode. There will be plenty of Canada basketball to talk about between now and Paris 2024, but we will put a bow on it for now and leave it there. Alex, thanks so much for joining the show. Glad your jet lag has been extinguished by now. Anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Yeah, just you can check out my stuff. I'll be doing a bit more Raptors coverage for Raptors Republic throughout the year. You can check out my Weekend Ball podcast. I mean, we're wrapping up with Canada basketball, but you can check all my stuff out for that. And then I have my own podcast, Behind the Play, which you can check out, which I'm hoping to have some big NBA hitters in terms of maybe a Brian Windhorst, maybe a Ramona Shelburne. So we'll see. But I have been in contact, so I'm not just blowing smoke. And if you're into hockey and other sports as well, you can check that out. So amazing. Shout out to Locked On Senators. They've been really good to me, and obviously part of the Locked On network. So just shout outs to them. If you're
giving them big heads along with Vivek too, unacceptable.
Yeah, I know. And also just to Vivek, no one wants to watch cricket. So just tell him that.
Hey. Okay. Now I'm fighting back in his honor.
I'm kind of kidding. I actually like cricket, but it was too easy to say. So I did it anyways.
Oh man, Alex, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining the show. We'll have you back again for sure. Those of you out there, thank you so much for tuning in. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. We are on Discord. Link is in the description. Come hang out. We would love to see you in there. You can also find the show on Instagram, on Twitter, if you're still using Twitter for some reason. At Locked On Raptors, all the places you can follow, subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast apps for free. I didn't mention that part. It's free. Everything's not free in this hell world we live in, but the podcast is, and it will stay that way, so you can go and find it on your favorite pod apps and on YouTube. We'll be back again tomorrow talking starting lineups and much more with Big V. Well, until then, thanks so much for hanging. Bye-bye.